Today, we're breaking down nostalgia as a game design technique into 7 different levels. Let's start with level 1, nostalgia bait. Nostalgia bait is what we call it when games use nostalgia to get you through the door. Designers do this by explicitly or implicitly invoking a specific reference that takes you back in time. Like the new Avengers movies, bringing back Robert Downey Jr., these games are intentionally referencing something old to make you feel a certain kind of way. And players love it because it scratches a real itch, the intensely powerful desire to go back to something known and beloved. Take the crowdfunded masterpiece, Shovel Knight. The entire game was built from the ground up as an homage to the NES. When you play the side-scroller, you experience the same limitations that players of third-generation consoles would have come up against. Everything from the color palette, to the level design, to the way your character moves, and the way the screen scrolls when you exit an area makes you long for the gaming heritage of the past. Mighty No. 9 is another example, but it references a specific game instead of an era. A project developed by the creator of Mega Man, it replicates the original experience and gives exactly what you'd expect. In this case, that even includes the touch of the original creator. There's also games like Bloodstained, which go to great lengths to feel like a Castlevania game, and Yooka-Laylee, which replicates the 2-character control system from Banjo-Kazooie, and brought back Grant Kirkhope to compose, but switched the characters from a bear and a bird to a lizard and a bat. This form of video game nostalgia is a win-win. Players enjoy them because they directly invoke games that they're familiar with, and designers use this as a way to get the controller in the player's hands. You design a game around references players already know, and they're going to step in the door to revisit that feeling. At the same time, you don't have to worry too much about tutorials and teaching because the vast majority of the players already know what they're getting into. So, when this technique is done well, you're creating a comforting, feel-good experience that makes you recall your most cherished gaming memories. So, some games use nostalgia as a hook. Others treat it as the actual subject matter. This is level 2, thematic nostalgia. These games don't just reference nostalgic things. They are literally constructed with nostalgia as a core theme at the heart of the game. Let's start with Astrobot. The point of the game isn't just to remind players of a console that they like, but to emphasize why they liked it and to tap back into that experience. The ship you fly on looks like a PS5. You travel around on a DualSense controller. You're looking for a damn CPU. The levels are based on God of War, Ape Escape, Uncharted, and other deeply nostalgic, well-loved franchises. The goal of the game isn't to remind you of being a little kid playing games, but to immerse you in those feelings and recreate those feelings as closely as they can. Using signals like Astrobot playing as Kratos or doing Ape Escape levels are nostalgic and aesthetic and mechanical recreations that give designers a direct imperative for the look and feel of the game, and a goal for them to pursue as far as player experience. It's a game that never lets you forget that you're playing a game on a system made for playing games, just like the ones you enjoyed as a kid. The game isn't invoking nostalgia, it's actually about nostalgia. The same thing is true in Evo Land, which starts off with a recognizable structure based on Diablo, Zelda, and other classics. Not only is it chock full of references, but as you advance in the game, you unlock graphical upgrades that take you on a field trip through video game history. It's purpose-built to give any player a chance to encounter the era of games that they're nostalgic for. Pony Island takes a slightly different tact. Instead of playing with the imagery of nostalgia, it's focused on how nostalgia is created in the most literal sense. You spend part of the game playing an endless runner, where you control a pony and dodge obstacles and fight off enemies shoot 'em up style, and the rest of the game involves traveling through portals into the literal code of the game. The code looks like old school DOS screens and reminds us of what games are literally made of and where the games we love started. The third level of nostalgia is resource constraint, and it's given us some truly iconic indie gems. Here's a fundamental reality in the games industry. The exorbitant costs of AAA graphics, processing, and production scope are simply unattainable for most independent game developers. If a solo indie dev had to compete against Blizzard or Rockstar on production value alone, no amount of crowdfunding is going to help. It simply would not be a fair competition. One powerful way that indie devs have tried to circumvent this structural challenge is to adopt a nostalgic art style in their games to lower production costs without harming aesthetic quality. Creating pixel art avatars costs a lot less than crafting fully rendered 3D environments and takes way less time to optimize. Take Stardew Valley. Eric Barone built the entire game over the course of 4 years. That meant limiting the ambition of the project in some ways, which in turn opened up a well of artistic specificity and creativity. It was a secret code that enabled Barone to continue working on the game and consistently release massive patches and content updates. The nostalgic look enabled a lower production overhead, which means the game has stayed updated year after year and the player base has continued to grow. This is why Stardew Valley has remained a phenomenon since the first day it appeared on the scene. The point here is not that these choices were made to lighten creative lift. They were just concessions to reality. There's only so much a single dev can do, but by leaning into their constraints rather than fighting against them, these games do incredible things. Since the release of Stardew Valley, Barone has added multiplayer, Ginger Island, which is almost a DLC or sequel's worth of free content, and the biggest content update of all, version 1.6, which added new farms and a ton of late game content, dialogue, events, and so much more. The game's limitations created a structure that allowed Barone to keep working on Stardew Valley long after it was shipped. It's not uncommon for indie devs to push up against real pressures, money, and turning their resource constraints into a superpower is a major reason why this technique of nostalgia is particularly important for smaller teams. This strategy is what has enabled so many incredible micro-budget indie masterpieces over the years. It's a nice little judo trick that enables small teams with a fraction of the budget and staff of AAA studios to compete against them and put out all-time classics that punch well above their weight and captivate fans all over the world. The fourth level of nostalgia is familiarity for experimentation. Remember the Mary Poppins song, "A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down"?
A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
That's basically what's going on here. It's a design trick where game developers use nostalgia to try new things and take big risks without scaring off potential players. Take the Mario spin-offs, for example. People attach to franchises because of the nostalgic and warm feelings that come from returning to something familiar. And the most creative game makers use that familiarity as an affordance to get experimental. The headliner here is Mario Party, a digital board game, a bunch of different mini games, turn-based, multiplayer, slow-paced. None of this is in any other Mario game. Getting players to give it a shot is a pretty big ask, but by adding Mario to the mix, that ask seems a lot more reasonable. Dr. Mario, the Mario RPG sub-franchise, and even the Mario XCOM hybrid Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle all follow the exact same pattern. The familiarity with the franchise is what allows designers to get experimental with mechanics and game design. Maybe the zaniest example of this is Kingdom Hearts. You can't get into nostalgia in game design without mentioning it. The game is filled with mechanical and narrative experimentation. I mean, just think about the sheer insanity of everything going on in that game. The unhinged plot surrounding Ansem, Organization 13, Sora, the Heartless, and Nobodies would be a lot harder for audience to hang on to without Goofy, Donald, and the familiar faces of the Disney and Final Fantasy cast providing footholds. A franchise with a plot as dense as this honestly needs nostalgia to get the ball actually rolling. Now, there does not always need to be a franchise hook for this to work. Sea of Stars and Chained Echoes were both games with original mechanics and challenges that deviated from the traditions of their genre. They attracted their initial player base by showcasing old-school nostalgic art styles to get people to try them out, and then the design of the games hooked players in. Word of mouth took those games from small, independent projects to huge hits. In all of these cases, designers are using the familiar to introduce the new. And when they do so successfully, players and designers both get to enjoy broader, more interesting possibilities. Level 5, subversive nostalgia. So, we just saw how nostalgia in video games can give players a sense of comfort and emboldens them to experiment with the new. But what if you use that to give players that sense of comfort just to pull off a complete reversal of their expectations? This is the fifth level of nostalgia in video games, subversive nostalgia, or the arts of the rug pull. Undertale absolutely nails this technique, and it's why the game is considered a masterpiece. By the way, late game spoilers, so jump here if you want to avoid that. The aesthetic of the game situates you instantly in the familiar. It's a turn-based RPG. You explore a weird new world, one that looks and sounds familiar, while overcoming challenges through combat and puzzles. Except the combat isn't always what you'd expect. Undertale turns combat on its head by creating a specific win condition to spare the enemy, a move that runs directly opposite to most turn-based encounters. It's also mechanically surprising when it turns your defend command into various bullet hell puzzles. Undertale takes your expectations and immediately sets them sideways. Because of the look, sound, and mechanics of the game, players make specific choices. They think they know this game to some degree, so they know what to do. What makes Undertale special is that those choices have unintended consequences that challenge the player's assumptions. This culminates in the final reveal that love and XP stand for level of violence and execution points. Based on how many enemies you've killed, you get a score to show the ethical toll that your adventure has taken on the world. It places the player in a new role, not as a conquering hero, but as an adventurer whose choices have a cost. There are multiple endings based on those scores, ranging from the pure pacifist run to the genocide route. This whole process only works because of the assumptions the player enters the game with. Nostalgia is the tool that sets the table and allows designers to set the players up to experience the twist and reflect on their understanding of playing and genre. This style of subversion can range from critical big ideas like in Undertale, or Braid, where the Mario-style hero fights Goomba-style enemies and platforms around to save a princess. Only it turns out he isn't actually trying to rescue a princess, but is rather chasing a princess who wants nothing to do with him. The setup takes a structure we all know and flips the perspective, and challenges the player to think from a new angle in a way that only games can. On the other hand, subversive nostalgia can also be tied to the gameplay. Like in Resident Evil Village, spoiler warning, jump here to skip ahead. That game takes almost the opposite tact of Braid. Instead of taking the player from hero to creep, Village turns the player from hunted, which is the baseline for most Resident Evil games, poor Ethan, to hunter. When you take over Chris Redfield partway through the adventure and go super murder mode, it's a huge flip from fleeing the giant lady and her big hat, completely reversing the expectations that the game and the entire series as a whole built up to this point. These games use nostalgia to let players make assumptions about the games before they flip the script. This is the power of subversive nostalgia. Now, if you think that's crazy, buckle in, because the next two levels in particular go somewhere really unexpected. Level 6 is self-reflective nostalgia. This level is about using nostalgia to raise deeper questions that interrogate the very nature of games and even nostalgia itself. Games here are doing something extremely interesting. They're referring back to previous installments of that game series and using the time that has passed in the game world or in the real world to do something compelling narratively. Level 6 is all about getting meta. Games at this level force you to consider the passage of time. There's no better example than the 2018 God of War. By the way, spoilers incoming, so if you haven't played God of War, jump to this timestamp to skip. When we pick up that story, our legendary god killer Kratos isn't on a grand adventure. He's now a single dad with a precocious son. He's mourning his dead wife, he lives in a cabin, and his legendary chains have been replaced with an axe. This is extremely not the character we're used to. In the big turning moment of the game, Kratos must venture to Helheim, where his frost axe won't work. To get a different weapon, he goes home and pulls out the Blades of Chaos, the weapon he used earlier in the series that players of this game are seeing now for the first time, a somber return to the person he used to be. It's a complicated sequence. It's sad that Kratos is losing his life as a father and going back to the violent life he thought he left behind. But at the same time, it's awesome, because the Blades of Chaos are iconic video game weapons that God of War fans love. And the first fight you use them in is one of the most fun parts of the entire game. It's an emotional cocktail that can only be achieved in this medium, and only through leveraging nostalgia in this particular way, and it's present throughout the entire game. The story is themed around Kratos' regrets from previous titles. He's grown up and he realizes the person he was isn't the person he wants to be as a father. The game is invoking nostalgia for the series, while also layering in complex themes of maturing, parenthood, and generational cycles. All themes that resonate with fans who played the original and have lived and grown in the years between releases. Our nostalgia for the original God of War is what makes 2018's reflection on it possible. Games at this level are using nostalgia as a technique to make players reflect and look inward. The Final Fantasy VII Remake plays with the same idea. Throughout the game, the party is confronted by ghosts who want to steer them onto the path of the original plot. They're always in tension with the ways the remake deviates from the original. FF7 is reckoning with the challenge of adaptation and what it means to be a remake. It's a game that asks what we get out of nostalgia and why we want to revisit the past in the first place, even while it's doing the exact thing that it's interrogating. Breath of the Wild does the same thing with its design philosophy. Breath of the Wild hypercharges the original game's goal of rewarding curiosity and inspiring exploration. This structure leverages nostalgia to interrogate what the series has become and if the franchise wants to keep changing or not. Here at level 6, we're really starting to go deep on how nostalgia can be used as a design technique. Games at this level are interested in embracing nostalgia for the warmth and positive feelings it creates, but also as a means to raise deeper questions about the experience of nostalgia itself. Level 7, synthetic nostalgia. So far, we've seen how nostalgia can be deployed as individual techniques to enhance the game experience. But some games take this technique to its final form and synthesize these effects into something that's greater than the sum of its parts. This is level 7, synthetic nostalgia, when the lower level nostalgia techniques that we discussed so far are layered together into a synthesis that creates extraordinary games that are unlike anything else. There's one game out there that truly nails this transcendental peak of nostalgia, But first, let's warm up with a couple other standout examples. Tunic hooks people in with the familiarity of a Zelda-esque aesthetic, directly referencing the level design, game design, items, bosses, puzzles, and overall visual style to give players a recognizable entry point. As you explore the world and find collectibles, it becomes clear that you're actually finding pages from an old-school SNES-era manual, revealing a meta plot that changes everything. Then the pause menu takes players out of the game and into the perspective of a kid playing this game on a CRT TV, a kid whose doodles even appear on the manual pages that you find in-game. It wouldn't be accurate to say that nostalgia here is just a hook, visual style, or even a theme. It's so much more. As you play, you realize you aren't playing as the little fox. You're playing as the kid, playing as the little fox. You're playing as yourself, as you might have in your own childhood, in an alternate universe. The nostalgia evoked isn't just for the games you used to play, but for the kid you used to be. This is what I mean by synthetic nostalgia. Tunic synthesizes all of the previous nostalgia techniques to create something that's greater than the sum of its parts. Nostalgia as a hook, as subversion, as self-reflection, and as theme, and creates a transcendental experience that takes the aesthetic power of nostalgia one step further than anything else we've talked about today. Cuphead does the same thing in a completely different way. It uses a visual style that powerfully evokes the past, hand-drawn 1930s rubber hose-style cartoons. This vintage art style and music is then paired up with old-school NES and Genesis shoot-'em-up gameplay to create a unique, cozy experience of comfort and familiarity. But those expectations are quickly subverted. Cuphead greets players with a much more violent, dark, and challenging experience than its comforting visual style and music initially suggests. Plus, the boss fights require a mechanical skill floor that is almost Souls-like. The creators of Cuphead use nostalgia in every aspect of their design system, from music to animation, to establish a tone that the actual gameplay and characters disrupt at every turn. That's how they layer these individual techniques of nostalgia bait, subversion, familiarity, and thematic nostalgia, and synthesize them into something truly unique and peerless. But there's precisely one game out there that I think takes every single one of these techniques and uses them all at once to craft a completely unique experience. It is the best example of synthetic nostalgia that I can find, UFO 50. Using a pixel art aesthetic, the creators designed 50 minigames that show the rise and fall of a completely fictional studio, UFO Soft, that lived from 1982 to 1989 and developed games for the equally fictional LX game console. Each of the 50 games is fun, inventive, and differentiated, and come together to tell a meta-narrative about the rise and fall of this fictional company. Some of these games capture the simplicity of the 80s, while others showcase the incredible ambition some of these fictional projects tried to achieve. Many of them feature the space explorer Campanella, who is the mascot character for UFO Soft, basically what Mario is for Nintendo. UFO 50 captures a transcendent kind of nostalgia by creating a totally fictional universe that feels just like our earliest days of gaming. And to do that, it draws on all of the techniques that we've talked about. It's nostalgia bait. Some of the games play and look exactly like the games of the time. It's themed around nostalgia from end to end. It's playing into the technical constraints of games made in the past, limiting its graphics and technology to the 80s, and the technical constraints of this fictional LX console. It evokes the familiar and gets experimental with both the games in the collection and the meta-narrative that it's telling. It's subversive by showcasing not only the beauty of retro games, but their limitations, which challenges the rose-colored glasses that we wear when we think about the games we grew up with. And it's self-reflective because it fabricated an era of video games that reflected a real one, and then positioned the collection as a sort of retrospective on both the real and fictional past. It's an incredible achievement. The creators wanted to bring an entire era of gaming to life, both to make older gamers nostalgic and to show younger gamers what others are nostalgic for. Its success speaks to the power of nostalgia as a technique and what kind of experiments it's capable of helping along, especially when designers put their minds to using these various levels at the same time. At whatever level, nostalgia is a technique that appears everywhere in video games, and designers reach for it all the time because our attachment to the past is a very potent feeling that guides us towards present experience and future expectations. That constantly evolving history of video games is complex, deep, and full of surprises. Designers use nostalgia to refer back to those memorable moments in that past to find new ways to shock and excite players. That's why it's worth thinking about how to use it as a tool for game design. When deployed correctly, it can enable games to take the kind of wild swings that push the form forward into the places that our kid minds could never have imagined. So, what did we miss? I'd love to know what other games are using nostalgia as a design technique, especially for anything that didn't come up in this video already. Let me know in the comments below, and subscribe to Bezzy for more on the craft of game design.